According to General Hospital spoilers, the drama in Port Charles has reached new heights as Willow Corinthos forms a sinister alliance with Drew Quartermain, raising concerns that she is on a vengeful rampage. Willow's fury, driven by Michael Corinthos' new family with Sasha Gilmore Corbin and baby Daisy, has drawn her closer to Drew, whose own plans make them a volatile pair. With whispers of Willow's involvement in Daisy's kidnapping on July 4th, is her collaboration with Drew propelling her down a revenge-fueled path? Or will it backfire? Willow's vengeance takes a dark turn. Willow's anguish over losing her children, exacerbated by Drew's lies and scheming, has turned into a desire for retribution. Her love with Drew appears to fuel her darker inclinations, as viewers now know she planned Daisy's crib disappearance to harm Michael and Sasha. Drew's machinations pique her interest, but is Willow simply under his spell or a willing participant? If her rampage continues, possibly with another daring act, will it destroy Michael or disintegrate when Jason Morgan intervenes? Drew's grip on Willow, vowing to help her regain visitation, covers his own goal, as his affair with Nina Reeves remains covert. Willow's sinister partnership, which may be plotting against Michael, could lead to harsh measures such as framing Sasha for instability. If Jason discovers their plans, Willow's friendship with his twin brother may suffer. Will Drew's influence push her farther into vengeance, or will she recognize his grip before it's too late? General Hospital spoilers. Rampage or ruinous fall? If Willow's involvement in Daisy's kidnapping is revealed, the consequences could jeopardize her hopes for visitation with her children. Furthermore, it is possible that she will be imprisoned or subjected to a sting in Ferncliff or Shady Brook. Of course, Michael would be shocked, and he could be inclined to sympathize with her and suggest that she has had a mental breakdown rather than transformed into an unrecognizable version of herself who wishes to kill others. Sure, her own twin, Nellie Benson Jerome, may have been insane, but Willow has always been rather level-headed, while being easily influenced. It appears that old habits die hard. Will Willow's dark partnership with Drew spark a violent fury against Michael and Sasha? Or will it backfire, leaving her broken and alone? Keep checking back with us for more General Hospital news and spoilers. Liesl Obrecht will be returning to Port Charles soon, according to General Hospital. She will not be pleased to learn that her niece Nina Reeves is under Drew Quartermain's control. Will these two scheme against Congressman Cutthroat? We'll talk about how Liesl could assist Nina knock Drew down for good and get him away from Willow Tate. So we're not sure when Liesl will be back, but it should be July. So only a few weeks remain in the month. We do know that Britt Westbourne is returning to the scene this week. She appeared in this week's commercial when Jason Morgan brings Sasha Gilmore and baby Daisy to the airport. He's scheduled to accompany them to finalize the arrangements. Jason is surprised to encounter someone who looks exactly like Britt. So I'm wondering if he'll still board the plane or if he'll tell Sasha, "I'll meet you there later." We've heard whispers that Kelly Thibault isn't portraying Britt or a clone, but she is certainly a doppelganger of some sort, because Jason's head spun around when he spotted her. And this would not have happened if they had simply pretended she was someone new. So, Britt's darling mutter, Liesl, is also returning shortly, with major scenes with Rocco Falsaroni, and I'm sure the rest of the family will follow. General Hospital. Are Nina and Liesl Obrecht plotting against Drew? Soap Dirt. General Hospital. Rocco meets Liesl. Young actor Finn Francis Carr said he enjoyed working with her, and he said that Rocco dresses to impress when he meets with Liesl. He's dressed in a button-up shirt and says he combs his curly hair to keep it under control. It sounds very lovely. I cannot wait to watch it. But I anticipate that after speaking with Rocco, Liesl will check in with other family members, and Nina and her daughter Willow will be on Dr. O's must-see list when she returns to Port Charles. Rocco recently emailed Liesl, and that will bring her back to town. And if you recall, Rocco spent the first year of his life as Britt's son, Ben Westbourne. He was Liesl's fake grandson, but she still adored Rocco. So, I'm sure Liesl will be pleased to return to Port Charles and tell Rocco anything he wants to know about her daughter Britt. Nina's situation and Liesl's possible intervention against Drew. Aside from seeing Rocco, Liesl will undoubtedly be overjoyed to meet her niece Nina. She can't see Maxie Jones until they use a replacement actress, because Kirsten Storms is out, as we have reported. But I doubt Liesl will be pleased with the current status of her niece and great-niece Willow's lives. Of course, Nina will be overjoyed to have her Aunt Liesl back. She loves her. However, Nina does not currently have a large support network. And even fewer that she can truly explain what she's done and the circumstances she's put herself in as a result of her actions. But she can completely open up to Liesl. Drew makes more threats, so this week, I expect Drew to make more threats against Nina. Because he knows she collaborated with Portia Robinson on the ketamine scheme. Drew has been blackmailing and dominating Nina for a long time, and she can't escape his threats. And Nina is constantly afraid she may lose Willow. Because of Drew. So having Liesl back may be a great comfort to Nina. Because she will have Liesl's support, and someone to talk to about her experiences with Drew. On top of that, we all know how ruthless Liesl is. And I don't believe she'll be pleased to learn Drew is blackmailing her niece and making her life miserable. Nina may convince Dr. O that Drew is a nasty rat bastard, and that they need to get Willow away from him. Despite her great experience with the ex-Navy SEAL, I have serious doubts that Liesl will support Drew. Liesl is very protective of her family. Drew currently has control over Willow, and by extension Nina, and he is interfering with her peace of mind. He has ruined Willow's life, because he is fixated on her. That is the bottom line. If you don't recall, Drew actually saved Liesl's life when they first cast Cameron Matheson in the part, and Drew was being held captive and controlled by Peter August, with Victor Cassadine also present at the facility. If you recall, Liesl was also being held captive, and she actually treated some of Drew's injuries. That was back in 2021. Victor was obsessed with her, and Drew was able to get Liesl out of there, where he rescued her. But I don't think Drew's prior heroics will get him much sympathy from Liesl, given how far off the rails he's gone since then. Drew should remember that she is the same woman who kidnapped supervillain Peter August and held him captive in a home in the woods. Dr. O tortured him before attempting to burn him to death by setting the place on fire. Because he contributed to her son Nathan West's death. Because he called Faison in and shot their son. So, while Liesl undoubtedly appreciates Drew saving her from Peter and Victor, I don't see Drew getting away with blackmailing Nina and manipulating Willow. And if you recall, Liesl was overjoyed to learn Willow is her great niece. She gave bone marrow to save Willow's life when she was dying of leukemia. And in fact, Drew was the one who rescued Liesl and brought her home from Greece so she could save Willow. So Liesl will be astonished and disappointed to discover that Drew has strayed so far from the fine man he once was. General Hospital. Has Liesl taken action? I can imagine Liesl rushing into action, assisting Nina in taking Drew down in order to protect her, Willow, and the children Wiley Quartermain Corinthos and Amelia Grace Corinthos. So I can absolutely see Liesl shouting, "Enough with this. Drew has lost his way. He needs to be removed from their families' lives. Put down maybe." I guess Nina wouldn't have to work hard to persuade Liesl to help her with that slimy bag. Nina and Albrecht could devise a plan to get rid of Drew or persuade Willow that he must leave. That's the bare least if they can't simply get rid of him. And of course Nina will not want to kill Drew. But Liesl might, you know. But she's also an eccentric and smart doctor. Nina has an unlimited financial account, so the two of them might plan some serious conspiracies. I'm confident they can find a way to get Drew away from Willow and ideally out of town. I think it'd be fantastic if they could put him back in the jail in Greece where Victor and Peter held him for a few years. Mind control experiments and potential twists with Hank Dalton. Who knows? Maybe Liesl can get her hands on the tarot card that activates Drew's programming, and so controls him. And we've heard via a leaker that Albrecht is collaborating with Hank Dalton on his dubious mind control experiments, so take that with a grain of salt. If you recall from General Hospital this week, Sidwell informed Dalton that their common friend was dissatisfied with his poor development. And Sidwell stated that they will send a courier. So, I'm wondering if the Brit lookalike is the courier and Liesl is a mutual friend. We will see. However, this was a leak, not a spoiler regarding Albrecht and Dalton. So this leaker was quite accurate about other things, like Jonathan Jackson's exit, Kirsten Storm's temporary exit, and Sophia Matson's upcoming exit. So we'll see if Dr. O has more than one reason to come to town, Rocco and Dalton, and then more reasons to stay, such as Nina and Willow, as well as Drew's enormous dilemma. And if Dalton is truly conducting mind control studies, perhaps they can experiment on Drew. General Hospital. Will Drew be stopped? It would be fantastic if Liesl could brainwash Drew and tell him to dump Willow, resign from Congress, and relocate to, I don't know, Nova Scotia or somewhere else and never return. If Liesl accomplishes this, the mayor may even award her. It would be an enormous communal service. I can't wait to visit Rocco and Dr. Albrecht. I can't wait to see Kathleen Gotti again. And I can't wait to watch Liesl's response when she discovers Drew has taken over Willow's life like a psychopath, and is attempting to ruin Nina's as well. Willow has long been considered a sign of grace, quiet power, and moral clarity in Port Charles. However, even the most outwardly kind spirits can be pushed to darkness when treachery, heartache, and disillusionment take hold. Willow has been feeling weird lately. Her eyes no longer reflect only hope and healing. They are filled with something darker, harsher. And rumors circulate across General Hospital that her unexpected alliance with Drew Kane may not be about healing scars or rebuilding trust. Instead, it could be about fueling vengeance. Willow Tate, once a serene person, appears to be falling into a darker realm. Not because she wants to, but because she believes she has no other option. Her world has crumbled far too often. Her marriage to Michael, which was once a source of hope in the midst of so much tragedy, is now on unstable ground. And her brush with death during her leukemia battle gave her a need for control. The fragility of life has taught Willow that waiting for justice or fairness is a losing game. Now she wants to make her own rules, which is where Drew steps in. Drew, once the caring brother figure, has experienced a transformation of his own. Prison altered him. Betrayal changed him. Drew is no longer disguising the scars caused by Michael's manipulation of his life. He's no longer just a man on a mission. He's on a quest to exact revenge. To others, Willow's alliance with Drew seemed unexpected. However, for those who have been paying close attention, this comes as no surprise. When Michael and Willow reached their breaking point, Willow required someone who knew the nuances of pain and vengeance. She wanted someone who would not preach forgiveness, but would instead provide her with the tools she needed to protect herself emotionally and strategically. Drew was that person. Their bond stems from betrayal, not just shared family ties. Both are hurt by Michael. Both feel discarded. And they're tired of pretending that turning the other cheek is still an option. Their collaboration began innocently enough, with private discussions, shared grievances, and a growing realization that, just maybe, they could help each other recover. But sometime along the way, it shifted from assistance to strategy. Drew has been providing Willow with not only the emotional affirmation she has been missing, but also the empowerment to reclaim control. Willow, who has frequently felt as if life occurs to her, sees Drew as a partner in her success. And that transition is perilous. What's more concerning is that Willow doesn't appear to recognize the line she's crossing. Her sense of right and wrong has always served as her anchor, but recently it appears to be unhinged. She is beginning to believe that vengeance disguised as justice is appropriate. Michael deserves to be brought down a peg. That Carly's manipulations must end, no whatever the cost. She no longer owes anyone the pleasant, soft-spoken version of herself. Drew is stoking the fire. He understands how to tap into Willow's underlying wrath, sense of betrayal, and desire to matter. He's convincing her that by working together, they can expose hypocrisy, reclaim what is rightfully theirs, and finally make others feel the anguish they've been carrying for far too long. While Drew may be motivated by long-held grudges, Willow's motivations are more fragile, and perhaps more unpredictable. The danger is that Willow loses herself in the process. She tells herself that this is about strength, empowerment, and no longer being the one to forgive while others take advantage. But she doesn't realize that the more she gets into this relationship with Drew, the more she risks becoming unrecognizable. Resentment erodes her empathy. Her clarity is obscured by resentment. And her once sincere longing for peace has transformed into something harsher, colder. This is not the Willow who used to sit with dying patients as a nurse, bringing consolation and grace. This is Willow who is playing chess with people's lives. And while she may believe she is in control, Drew is actually playing a longer game. He has been injured more profoundly than he admits, and his agenda may not coincide with Willow's ideals for much longer. They appear to be together right now. However, if Willow begins to withdraw or doubt the ethics of their actions, Drew may be less inclined to let her walk away. That is the risk of associating with someone who is engaged in emotional warfare. They are only concerned with retribution, not repercussions. Drew believes he is owed a reckoning, And if Willow resumes her role as a moral compass, she may find herself in the crosshairs of his fury. Their bond is unstable, based on mutual hurt rather than mutual trust. That makes it flammable. The signals have already begun to appear. Willow's tone has evolved during chats with Carly. She's colder and more calculating. She has ceased supporting Michael, even when others criticize him. She's making subtle power maneuvers within the hospital, realigning allegiances and quietly closing doors on those she formerly relied on. She is no longer the victim, nor is she the healer. Friends are beginning to notice. Sasha in particular has raised some eyebrows. She knows Willow well enough to notice that something is wrong. She now has an edge that she did not have before. When Sasha gently confronted her about it, Willow responded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That is not the Willow that Port Charles recalls. Then there is Nina. She's paying close attention to this development, albeit from a distance. Nina understands what it's like to fall into obsession masquerading as justice. She recognizes pieces of her former self in Willow, such as the desire to right wrongs, be heard, and ultimately prevail. Nina would never say it out, but there's a part of her that worries Willow may fall into the same emotional quicksand she did before. The question is whether Willow will awaken before it is too late. She still has a shred of innocence left, a core of decency that could pull her back from the edge. But every day she spends strategizing with Drew. Every small step toward retaliation weakens that foundation. The deeper she goes, the more difficult it will be to find her way back. Michael, for his part, detects a shift. He's attempted to contact her with tiny gestures and vulnerable chats, but Willow isn't biting. She hears his apologies, but they bounce off a previously unseen wall. Her silence speaks louder than her words. Michael, despite his reluctance to admit it, thinks he has already lost her. If Willow and Drew succeed in their stealthy strategy, whether it's exposing Carly's secrets, undermining Michael's authority at ELQ, or targeting Nina's vulnerable position with the SEC, it may cost Willow everything she once valued. Because power earned by manipulation does not allow for healing. She may believe she is merely restoring her agency, but the reality is more difficult. This is not empowerment. Rather, it is corruption disguised as commitment. Drew might enjoy the chaos, but Willow will not. Willow will have to meet the mirror when the dust has settled. People have been injured, and reputations have been shattered. She'll have to determine whether the version of herself looking back is one she can live with. What if Drew turns on her first? What if he thinks Willow's newfound voice is inconvenient? Is she not ruthless enough to go the distance? What if he reveals her role in their silent rebellion? Willow may think she's gained an ally, but Drew isn't anyone's puppet. And if the tides turn, she may find herself sacrificed for his revenge story. That is the actual danger. Willow may not only backfire on the plan, but she may also backfire on herself. In the end, Willow's trip may not be about retribution after all. It could be about rediscovering who she is when the temptation to vengeance is most. Will she learn that her strength comes not from being feared, but from remaining true to her loving nature? Or will she allow grief to transform her into someone she vowed she'd never be? Nina Reeves had spent months attempting to put her life back together after her secrets were exposed. Nina felt hollow as a result of the pressure between her and Willow, the havoc her actions caused for Sunny and Carly, and the ever-deepening distance between her and her own kid. However, grief and shame had hardened into something quite different. Bitterness. In that darkness, she discovered a familiar comrade in Liesl Obrecht, who, despite her own checkered background and attempts at redemption, could never completely resist the gravitational pull of manipulation and vengeance. The two ladies, bound by blood and injured pride, began to devise a new strategy, with Drew Kane at the heart. Drew, who had repeatedly claimed moral superiority, has recently grown more self-righteous than ever. His judgmental posture after Nina's SEC tip-off was uncovered had not only alienated her, but also incensed her. Nina saw more than disdain in his gaze. She saw someone who had blindly supported Carly, who had cost her everything, and who strode through Port Charles as if his past transgressions had been erased just because he had once been a prisoner. Liesl, still grieving the distance between herself and Britt and burdened by the complex guilt of her own past, didn't need much persuasion. She had always found Drew's heroic streak insufferable, And she knew from experience that people like Drew always had something hidden that they didn't want exposed. The first part of their plan was silent. Liesl had contacts, old and dangerous ones, who owed her favors or were concerned about what she knew about them. Nina hesitated at first. She had not gone this far over the boundary in a long time. However, as the weeks went and her name was dragged through the mud, and Drew continued to sling his weight about Port Charles like a moral compass, her doubts faded. Liesl placed some calls. A man from Geneva, who specializes in digital infiltration, volunteered to assist them in tracing Drew's recent financial transactions. Liesl was confident he had made a mistake somewhere. A sign of something unethical, a bribe, a silent partner, or perhaps an off-the-books withdrawal. They weren't out to destroy him yet, they just wanted leverage. However, as they went deeper, they discovered something else. Drew had secrets, but not the ones they expected. A name kept surfacing in the offshore records, Aurora Holdings Subdivision C. Nina didn't recognize it, but Liesl grew visibly cold when she did. That particular account had once been tied to a shell corporation that facilitated untraceable transactions for WSB Black Ops years ago. The implications were staggering. If Drew had access to or was funneling money through such an account, it meant he hadn't walked away from his past as cleanly as he'd claimed. Perhaps his time in captivity had done more than just change his outlook, it may have changed his loyalties. Nina pressed Liesl for more, but Liesl warned her. The people associated with these operations were dangerous. Still, Nina pushed forward. She arranged a meeting under a pseudonym and posed as an interested investor. The man she met was cold, efficient, and deeply suspicious. He asked too many questions. By the time Nina left the nondescript hotel room in Geneva, she realized she had stirred something darker than she had anticipated. But it was too late to pull back now. Liesl received word that Drew had been monitoring communications in that region, perhaps not actively, but someone close to him was certainly keeping tabs. It became clear that Drew was hiding something not only from Port Charles but from the government itself. If the right person found out, he could be charged with treason or worse. Liesl recommended caution. She didn't want to trigger a war they couldn't win. Nina, however, was emboldened. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming her life. If Drew could be exposed as a fraud or a criminal, then everything he said about her, every judgment he passed, would collapse under the weight of his own hypocrisy.